All right, everybody, welcome to the 1031 Exchange Power Hour. Welcome to LEARNin 1031 Live. My name is Chris Astillero with Exchange Resources. We have an amazing show for you today. Please join us. All right, everybody, again, this is an FAQ on 1031 Exchanges Live. We want to be able to answer your questions at the end of the show to go over the 1031, the delayed exchange and the reverse exchange. We're going to dive deep into just some of the basic rules of the 1031 tax deferred exchange. And we're also going to go into the reverse exchange. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is John. John, great to have you. He's an attorney, real estate broker, realtor extraordinaire, has lots of great experience in real estate and the laws. So John, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have you. Please introduce yourself.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the warm introduction and the invitation to participate today. As you mentioned, yes, I am an attorney here in San Diego, as well as a real estate broker, broker associate with Duomo Realty up in North County. I've been practicing now for, maybe over 10 years. I don't even want to give that away.
Fantastic. Well, you look like you just graduated from college.
Oh, well, thank you. Oh, yeah, there you go. Flattery will get you everywhere, sir. Flattery will get you everywhere. Genes, right? I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyway, thank you, John, for being here today. It's so great to have you and your knowledge and your expertise. Can I ask you really quickly what your area is that you specialize in as far as real estate in San Diego? I mean, you go everywhere, but what is it? What are the areas?
Absolutely, yes. I like to basically serving the greater North County area. What I like to explain to folks who know kind of geographically where we sit, you can think of it as a box between the 15 freeway on one end, the 5 on the other, the 78 and the 56. So serving Carmel Valley, Poway, Scripps Ranch, Rancho Bernardo, Forest Ranch, Escondido, Vista, San Marcos, that whole greater area.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for letting our viewers know, just in case they need to write up an offer or list their property. These are the areas that John specializes in. So let's get into it. Let's go into the 1031 exchange. What are the basics of the 1031 tax deferred exchange? But before we get to that, John, I know you've had some experience with the 1031 exchange. Can you briefly go over what your experience was and what that transaction entailed?
Absolutely. It was I had participated in one successful 1031 exchange. Tried another one, but ultimately that one didn't work out exactly as we wanted. Some of the key differences or things that I picked up on while participating in that is that the timing really is a real constraint. It is something that should be talked about, and if it is something that you're planning to do, have the opportunity to discuss it with your agent. There are some complexities, as you will note when you get into the specifics of the 1031, that do have to be maintained, and so having a clear plan of action is very important. As far as the overall structure, the biggest challenge, honestly, was identifying the property. It took us quite a bit of time, and as you know, at the beginning, as the clock starts to run, you think, well, yeah, I have some time. I can find it. But as the days tick off and the weeks tick off, all of a sudden you really do start to feel that pressure. And from my vantage point, that is the key distinction from let's call it a traditional buying scenario.
So yeah, you mentioned the time constraints. We're going to go over that really quickly. So some of the basic rules. Number one rule is you have to buy equal to or greater in value than your net sales price. So let's say you're listing a property for 1.6 million and your non-recurring closing costs, which include commissions, title, escrow fees, exchange fees, buyer concessions, is about $100,000. You take your 1.6 million and you deduct the non-recurring closing costs of 100,000, and you're left with a $1.5 million net sales price. The investors have to buy equal to or greater in value, buy another investment property at that price to be able to fully tax defer their capital gains taxes. So that's the first rule. The second rule is you have to buy like kind. And like kind is, John, real estate for real estate, investment for investment. Do primary residences work in a 1031 exchange?
That's one of the tricky ones. No, unfortunately, that's not one of the types of property that qualifies for this type of exchange.
Yeah, and the reason why is, of course, is intent. The most important thing is that word. That word is intent, is that the investor intends to sell his investment property and purchase another investment property with the intent to rent it out and hold it for income purposes. Okay, and we normally recommend at least 2 years or 2 tax years, depending upon what your CPA is comfortable with. So that's the second rule. The third rule is we are known by the IRS for our social security numbers and our EIN number. Same taxpayer selling must be the same taxpayer buying. Okay. If John and Mary Smith are purchasing the property or selling the property, it has to be John and Mary Smith purchasing the property. If it's a 4-member LLC, ABC LLC, selling the property, it has to be that 4-member LLC purchasing the property. So we are known by our EIN numbers and by our social security numbers. So there has to be consistency in the eyes of the IRS. Have you run into any issues of those before, John? Where?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
no. Luckily, it was all of that was let's say contemplated before we actually got into it. So we were able to identify make sure that it met the qualifications, and then again the timing issue that we discussed prior.
Yeah, and we do run into some issues because some investors, many investors, actually own their properties, their real estate investments, under an LLC. Okay, and sometimes you see you have a 4-member LLC where 2 partners want to do a 1031 exchange and 2 partners who just want to cash out, sail into the sunset, go to Cabo and go marlin fishing all their life, and they don't want to do it anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So they're tired of it and they want to drop out. So there's a way you can actually do that where you can deed out those 2 investors, cash them out, as long as the LLC still remains intact, right? The remaining 2 members can actually do a 1031 exchange into another property. And then the last, go ahead.
No, I said, you bring up an excellent point just quickly as far as the entity to entity, right? And the scenario you just posed is kind of the key thing I talk about with the timing. If you're going to need to negotiate with your partners to make sure that somebody can go fishing, that takes time. And you don't want to be doing that during your 45 days while you're trying to figure out and identify property, because that adds another layer of complexity to this already complex scenario. That's all I want to do.
Exactly. And you don't want to get audited, because if you do get audited, then that potentially could be a failed exchange. And that's not what we want to happen. You did mention, John, earlier about the time constraints. So let's talk about the timelines. Mm-hmm. So normally, once you list the property and it goes into escrow, that's the time that you tell Exchange Resources, hey, we're in escrow. We want to go ahead and execute the contract so that we can, in fact, get the exchange started, get the exchange, the 1031 exchange in place. This has to be done before close of escrow, okay? Because if you do it after close of escrow, the money has already switched hands. It's already in the investor's bank account, or he already has a check, and there's no way of backpedaling. You can't reverse it, right? So that's constructive receipt. They're going to have to go ahead and pay taxes on that. So we had an investor who called us 2 months ago, and he sold his property 4 months ago. He goes, Chris, I just sold my property 2 months ago. I still want to do a 1031 exchange. Can I do it? I go, I'm so sorry, sir, but you're still standing on the dock. The ship has already sailed and it's already too late. We can't do a 1031 exchange for you. So timing is everything. Right when it closes escrow and you haven't done a 1031 exchange, then you're going to have a tax consequence. So timing is definitely of importance here. And as soon as it closes escrow, 2 things happen. Okay, 2 things happen. Let's say the investor made $1 million in gain on that property that he's going to do a 1031 exchange. As soon as it closes escrow, that $1 million is wired to Exchange Resources. We hold those funds for the investor so that they can go ahead and identify the up to 3 properties they wish to identify and then close on the replacement property. We hold it in trust for them so that they don't touch it and get taxed on it. The second thing that happens is the 45-day timeline. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that, John. I know that you were talking about time constraints. What issues have you had with that 45-day period?
The biggest one, honestly, is identifying a property that matches or qualifies what the investor is looking for. Especially this exchange that I did was years back, so inventory isn't what it is today. And so with that limited constraint of available properties out there, that was one of the key components. The other one too, being matching kind of the vision that the investor has. Everybody has an idea of how they want to build out their portfolio or the type of property they want to hold. And that may not necessarily be available presently when you're now in this 45 range window, right? You basically have to look at the market and see what's available and pick from that. And so that is a real consideration, especially in the process of you're closing on your present home. You're now looking for a replacement, not your current home, on the current property. You're now looking for a replacement property, and the market may not bear exactly what you're looking for. So having a clear and honest conversation with your client of what exactly it is that they're looking for, and then diligently searching for that was what was able to allow us to actually get this thing done.
And John, when do you normally start searching? If you're doing a 1031 exchange, do you start searching before you, right when you list the property, before you list the property? And what do you do during that time? Because there's a lot of properties out there and during that time period.
Great question. And by the way, so that I can explain the framework, this was a little more complex because I was representing the investor here in San Diego. They were actually selling a property up in the Bay Area. And so there were two agents involved, one with the sale up north, myself with the purchase here. The client was the one that essentially set up the exchange, and I came in as the agent on the buy side. So luckily, this person, we already had a relationship. We had worked together previously, and they gave me the heads up. Hey, I'm in the process of doing this up north. I would like for you to participate here down south. Can you assist me in this process? And so by having that heads up, it really allowed me a great deal of time to scope the market, see what was available, try to match what the client was looking for. And even with that, we went to a multitude of properties that for one reason or another didn't quite match exactly what the investor was looking for. And so that was, to me, the true advantage that I had was that this person communicated with me early. Like I said, the ability to really structure the deal depends on that communication and the ability to identify, well, what is it that you're actually looking for, and then allow me the opportunity to go find it. So from my perspective, that was the thing that really allowed the process to consummate, because I only took essentially one part of it. I wasn't involved in both.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And it's a great thing that you did have experience, because there's going to be a lot more investors that you're potentially going to be working with, and having this knowledge is definitely you're going to have an edge over all the other agents who really don't know what's going on with 1031 exchanges. And so again, with regard to that 45-day period, you were talking about the market, and you were talking about sometimes, it's difficult, because what if it's a market where there's a lot of buyers, it's a buyer's market, and there's a lot of, multiple offer situation, and you can't even get your offer through, right? It's that, or, you find properties that are not really measuring up to what your investor really wants, and they don't want to settle for that property. It may not have the cash flow, because over here in San Diego, with the significant increase in price, you have to put a lot more down in order to even cash flow. So it's important for them to consider all of that, and it's important for them to prepare for that. So those are the basics of the 1031 exchange. Very simple rules. But again, you can talk to John about that if you're interested in buying a property and doing a 1031 exchange. He's already had experience, and so thank you for that. Let's move on and talk about what is a reverse exchange. A reverse exchange is very, very unique, and we've seen a significant increase in reverse exchanges because a lot of investors they're afraid to actually put their really good or great property on the market, and they have 45 days to identify the property which they wish to purchase. 45 days goes by just like that. So that's a lot of anxiety, that's a lot of stress. You're under the gun to find a replacement property that's either better or better than the investor's property, with a greater cash flow, a higher rate of return. And it's just an opportunity for them now with a reverse exchange to be able to purchase their replacement property first, and then they have time to go ahead and sell their relinquished property. So let's talk about that, John. I know you said you haven't really had a lot of experience with reverse exchanges. However, this is definitely an opportunity. We talked about it a few days ago. Let's talk about it right now. I mean, if you have an investor who is in love with their property, who is getting good cash flow from their property and doesn't want to let go of it, they're going to be afraid to list it with you because they only have 45 days to identify, right? And more than likely, they're going to go, well, John, can you guarantee that I'll list with you, I'll list my investment property with you, but can you guarantee that I'm actually going to get something better than the property that I'm going to sell? And what are you going to say? You're going to say, no, I can't guarantee you a better property. I mean, you may have to settle for something that's not as good, but guess what? With the reverse exchange, you can guarantee getting the property that you want, because you can actually purchase your property first, right? As soon as that closes, then you can go ahead and sell your relinquished property. Let's talk about the benefits of that and what investors, what type of investors would actually use this reverse exchange. It's more for the seasoned investor.
Okay, excellent point. A couple of things that you noted. From my perspective, when you first brought this idea, or not idea, but this concept, I had heard about it before, and it really piqued my interest for a variety of reasons. Number one, the idea of having a little bit of leverage on the timing side to really find the property that the client is looking for. That's a big plus. Additionally, by doing it in reverse, in a sense, you're really able to get a true sense of the market and try to compete in it, as opposed to, you mentioned it earlier, under the previous time constraints, the leverage does shift a little, potentially to having to have your offer accepted, maybe not necessarily on your terms. And so by flipping the script, if you will, now you have a greater latitude to truly go and search the market for something, like you noted, that your investor could truly be happy with. Now, the challenge there is that there are some additional, upfront costs or and frameworks that you have to consider in this process. So the idea of actually buying first and selling later, to me, really is attractive, because now we can, take a time. Ideally, you've already had that conversation. I have to go back to that. If this is something that you do want to do, lay out a framework with the person that you're going to be working with. Ideally, you have a seasoned professional that you know and trust that you can work with, and essentially build out what you're looking for. There's a lot of moving parts, and the more time that you have to really put all the pieces in place, have an understanding of where everybody fits, and then being able to go out into the world and see, okay, these are some of the properties that I think could potentially work, I think really flips the script completely and offers you a whole new vantage point to this great, opportunity when it comes to the deferred exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made some really great points. The thing is, with the reverse exchange, one of the benefits obviously is that you can write an offer on the replacement property as a non-contingent offer, and then close on that property first. The one that you really want, the one you fell in love with, the one with a great rate of return, great cash flow. So what happens is the investor uses the agent to write up an offer on the replacement property. That replacement property is then dropped into what's called an EAT, an exchange accommodator title holder. That EAT is essentially a corporation, which is an S corp that Exchange Resources puts together, and it's dropped into that temporary holding corporation, and it closes escrow. Once it closes escrow, then the investor has 45 days to identify the property that they wish to sell, their relinquished property. And I know that seems pretty simple, but 45 days for an investor who has multiple properties, they have to decide which one that they want to let go. So 45 days to identify, and an additional 135 days to close on that relinquished property. So a total of 180 days. And again, the reason why we drop it into this corporation is we don't, the IRS prevents the investor from holding title to both the replacement property and the relinquished property at the same time. So it takes them off of title. So then now they have time to sell their relinquished property and utilize those funds, the gain, to go ahead and repurchase that property in that corporation. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. We do involve an attorney who specializes in the reverse exchange. It does get quite complex, but I think for a lot of investors, the question is, you ask your investor, hey, I know you're afraid to sell your relinquished property because you might not be able to find something within that 45-day period. However, This is significantly more. Are you willing to pay $8,000, because it starts at $8,000 as opposed to $1,250 for a delayed exchange? Are you willing to pay $8,000 more to actually get the property that you really want and save $500,000 to $700,000 in taxes? And the answer is more than likely going to be, for a seasoned investor, yes.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you're going to run into investors like that, right, John?
Well, yes, absolutely. And from my vantage point, I guess the key components that I key in on. Number one, we're buying the property first, so we get to choose. We get to pick the pick of the litter, if you will, relative to the investor's point of view. Number two, we lock that opportunity. We're no longer having to compete. We're no longer having to search. Now we can actually get to the process of the 1031 exchange. The 45-day scramble is now out of the picture because, like you said, the timing flips. So we have a significant more amount of time to be able to execute the transaction. And lastly, the big one that you noted that I think should be highlighted, you're negotiating from a position of strength. It's a non-contingent offer. You get to really see what the market bears as far as you and the competition. You don't necessarily have to sweeten the deal, if you will. For example, if you were under the traditional 45-day time constraints where potentially you have to give out a little more in order to get what you want. So in reality, it is kind of positioning yourself from a negotiation from a position of strength. Now, it comes at a cost, like you noted. This isn't necessarily something that is free, obviously. And so with that added complexity, the numbers go up. So as you noted, this is a product that I do believe is more in line with a more seasoned investor, potentially somebody with a portfolio already that is looking to move pieces in and out. You have to have the available money to be able to purchase the property first. That's another consideration that has to be taken into the whole. So as you can see, the reverse, like you noted, there's multiple additional pieces. You're building a company that's going to hold your title, right? Think about that. You're essentially having to create a temporary structure to hold title, to see it through, close it out, transfer title. I mean, everything we're talking about goes into that price. It's not, there's a complexity there that goes beyond just the traditional forward exchange.
Absolutely. There's just so much. And that's why we involve an attorney, in-house attorney who specializes in that. And they've done so many reverse exchanges. Every exchange has their own nuances, complexities. We've been in the business for over 27 years and have done over 60,000 tax-deferred exchanges. So 60,000 tax-deferred exchanges later, and as a QI, we've held over $35 billion of exchange funds. I mean, whether it's the standard, the reverse exchange, the delayed exchange, the simultaneous exchange, we do build to suit. So it's all about choosing the right exchange company who can actually do these complex transactions. And as you noted, John, it really just takes the right type of investor who sees the opportunity, who really, is afraid of not getting the property that they really want. And like you said, it's a non-contingent offer. So you close it. I mean, you get the pick of the litter, and it's just an amazing opportunity for a lot of investors to be able to build that portfolio and get the properties that they want. All right. Great. So moving on, before we move into the pros and cons, this is a quick snip of exchange resources. Located in Rancho Bernardo, we've been around for over 26 years and we've done over 60,000 tax-deferred exchanges. If you don't do a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, you could be faced with about 30 to 40% in taxes. Right? Wouldn't you rather roll that over to the next property so that you can buy more with it? Well, we're here to give you your options. Let's talk. All right, John. So we've talked about the delayed exchange. We've talked about the reverse exchange. From your experience, let's talk about the delayed exchange. What are the pros and cons? First of all, let's talk about the pros of the delayed exchange. Okay? From your experience, what are they?
So when you say delayed exchange, we're talking just the traditional...
The traditional delayed, straightforward, and it's also known as a stalker exchange, all synonymous.
Okay. And I'm sorry, rephrase the question again as far as the
Yeah, so
benefits.
the pros of doing a delayed
Okay,
exchange.
so the first one is the money, right? You're not paying the taxes. You get to, and
Right.
one of the key things that I like to highlight, because sometimes I do believe that people have a misconception about what this is. This isn't tax avoidance completely, right? We're
Correct.
basically deferring the tax. We're moving the tax further down the line as opposed to not paying tax at all. So that's one of the key concepts that hopefully people really wrap their head around. Obviously, more seasoned investors will know that, but for the folks who are considering this for the first time or contemplating potentially if this is the right vehicle for them, that is a key distinction that you have to understand. It's not that you won't be paying taxes ever. It's simply that you're rolling over the taxes in a way that allows you to keep a greater amount of your purchase power. With the idea being that you're going to bake it into your deal, essentially moving up in the type of property or the caliber of property that you're buying. So by having that available funds that would traditionally be taxed, your buying power increases. So to me, that's one of the biggest things right there. That alone would probably move a lot of people to consider this as a product to, especially on the investment side, a product to highly incorporate into their structure as a whole.
That's fantastic. And I think with some of the other benefits, we've seen a lot of investors actually significantly increase their equity, their gain in California. And now what they're doing is they're diversifying. That $500,000 property that they bought maybe 10 years ago is worth maybe 1.2 or 1.5 now, depending upon obviously where the location is. But now they can actually sell that property and buy multiple properties in another state where they can receive a higher rate of return, higher cash flow, and they could continue to maintain their depreciation. So that's one of the benefits. I think that diversifying their portfolio is a key concept because you can sell one and then buy a larger one, okay, with the delayed exchange. You can sell one and buy one, two, or three.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy multiple properties.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this before. If this is going to be great for management relief. So many of the investors who are baby boomers that in their mid 60s, 70s, 80s, and maybe in their 90s, who are tired of the tenants, toilets, and trash and the turmoil of dealing with tenants, because this is not a very landlord-friendly state.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get rid of that property and have the freedom to be able to spend with their grandkids, go on a cruise, travel the world, and they can roll that 1031 exchange. They can roll those gains into what's called a DST, the Delaware Statutory Trust, where they have a fractional ownership of a portfolio of real estate where they just get a passive income. Mm-hmm. So that's another benefit. Another benefit is also consolidation, right? They may have multiple properties, John, where they're going from zip code to zip code, managing these, and they're still going out in their car, going from zip code to zip code. But those three properties, they can actually sell all three and then consolidate it into one bigger one if they want. Right?
So you bring up, that you took the words right out of my mouth. The price points in California are such, they're so significant that there is the possibility that maybe one or two properties here in California, let's call them single family homes that are being rented as traditional tenancies, now can be rolled into maybe an apartment complex, maybe a mobile home park, maybe something to that effect, where you can essentially leverage the prices in California, to your point, consolidating the funds into a single venture, if that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And it does limit the exposure on the management, on the moving parts that require having 1, 2, 3 properties, say that you're managing here in the county. Putting them all together now, you can maybe umbrella them under one management company, and the overall upkeep is significantly reduced. So exactly what you noted, the ability to take 1, 2, 3, boom, put it into one, maybe not necessarily here in California, but elsewhere, is a very powerful piece as well.
Great. And another, I think the final and one of the most important benefits of having the delayed 1031 exchange is as the investors keep kicking the can down the road, and as they keep deferring, eventually they're going to pass away. And when they pass away, their legacy continues on with their heirs. Let's say they pass away today, the investor passes away today, the heirs receive a step up in basis, mm-hmm. right? Receive a step up in basis. They acquire the property at fair market value, and they can actually sell it the next day and not have to pay any of the taxes. So all those taxes are forgiven. So I think that that's one of the major benefits is, you just have to find out who your favorite kids are and then determine who's going to get what. But yeah, so those are the benefits. Let's move into the cons. What are the cons of the delayed exchange, you think, John?
Well, the key one that I keep harping on is the time. It's at least from my vantage point, the time. It's one of those things that what I tell people is that from my vantage point in real estate world, 45 days sound like a lot of time. 45 days sounds like, wow, we have an abundance of opportunity here to go out and really search for and identify something. But from my vantage point, it's just barely enough time to get things going because the physical work, like the getting in the car, driving out, looking at the properties, doing the math, figuring out if it actually makes sense, looking at the associated costs, it all starts to add up. And so what initially looked like, there's no problem, we're good to go, complicates when all of a sudden the property falls out or the property that you thought you were going to buy isn't there. And now you're 25 days in and the escrow that you thought was going to close now isn't closing. And so that's when you really start to feel the pressure of this. And so even in if you'll allow me a second to talk about my scenario, even when we identified the property that the client ultimately ended up purchasing, I still stress the benefit of actually identifying the full 3 in case anything happened with that original one. Luckily it didn't. But that idea of really having those fallback properties from my vantage point really could save the day, because should something happen, and I've had escrows where really unforeseen things happen. It's one of those things of life that you think you're right before the goal line, and then there's a fumble, and now the game is lost. So from my vantage point, being able to really fully take advantage of that is a real thing. The deferred taxes, I really believe that this is a great vehicle to build generational wealth. This is a vehicle where you have the ability to essentially kick the taxes down the road. And that is so big in today's society where you're taxed left, right, and center. And so, and by the way, this is a carve out created by the government for you to take advantage of. So from my vantage point, if it's there, if it's available, and if you do it as it's supposed to be done, why not take advantage of it?
That's a great point, John. All really, really good points about the delayed exchange. Let's talk about the reverse exchange. What are the pros and cons of the reverse exchange? So let's go ahead and get started. What do you think are the main advantages of the reverse exchange?
Advantages? Okay. Advantages, number one, you can secure your ideal property beforehand, right? We talked about that. It eliminates some of that timeline panic that I've mentioned now on multiple occasions. We do have that leverage of being able to write an offer that has nothing else hanging on it. Either you'll be able to get that deal done or you won't. And if you're not able to, ideally you can pivot and essentially move on to the next property. This is something that can be used in tight markets, because ideally, if the inventory isn't there where you need it to be, you have the available time to go out and find something that matches. Obviously, you mentioned the DST is kind of like the parachute, right? The safety at the end. And then it does protect your long-term strategy, because ultimately the idea is to scale this thing in the vision of the investor. And not everybody has the same vision. And really honoring your client's perspective and goals, I think, is very, very important. I would hate to lead a client in a direction where they're following my guidance based on my lack of understanding or a misguided idea of what we're trying to do. And ultimately, I place them in a place that they don't want to be. Having honest, open discussions of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're structuring it, all go toward the overall benefit of what this thing can do. And in essence, that's, a lot of the benefits that I see by flipping it, because now if you didn't have those early discussions, if you didn't have those timeframes met, well, you have some time now to do it. I would still recommend doing it at the top, but at least in the reverse, you have that.
Those are really, really good points. And, like you said, we do have to have an open discussion. That's why we have our in-house attorney. And I want to just make a shout out to Christine and Shalene, our in-house attorney, who are the best 1031 exchange, reverse exchange specialists in exchange resources. They are the best. They are great at communicating with our our clients. They're great at giving them the consultation that they need so that they can understand exactly what is going to happen in a very easy to understand way, so that it's not so complex. But they are great. So Shalene and Christine, thank you so much for your service and everything that you do for our clients regarding the reverse exchange and also the build to suit. So thank you. So moving on to, again, some of the other pros. It's a like you said, it's a non-contingent offer. They're going to be able to take that property, close on that property, and then have the time to go ahead and sell their relinquished property. Another pro is that it's very important to note that we do have the framework, the attorneys to be able to handle this type of transactions where a lot of other exchange companies don't have the attorneys in-house and they can't do the reverse exchange. So they would refer them to us. So that's another benefit. Another benefit is that you can buy, you can do a reverse exchange in another state if you want. Mm-hmm. So with reverse exchange, if the properties in California are not cash flowing, or the rate of return isn't there, they can look in Arizona, they can look in Texas, they can look in Idaho, Montana, all these other states, and they can do a reverse exchange in all those states. We do all 50 states, so that's definitely another benefit of doing the reverse exchange. But most importantly, it's peace of mind. Peace of mind knowing that the investor really and truly is going to get the property that they want. And like you said, when it comes to doing the delayed exchange, they don't have a lot of time, to identify and purchase the properties that they really want. So if they're just going to settle for properties that are not really lucrative or something that they really want, I mean, I'd feel bad as an agent because then it's like I feel like I didn't do my job, right? Well, so what do you think about that?
No, I agree 100%. And by the way, what you brought up, I think needs to be highlighted because especially us being in California, the ability to take California pricing and then move it to other states is a huge leverage piece.
Yeah,
right?
it really is.
You're selling a single home. Let's just say your investment property was in a particular part of town that held a significant value, $1.5, $2 million, right? You can take that $2 million out of California, and now you're buying an apartment somewhere. Now you're buying a complex somewhere. Now and whereas here in California, it becomes another home. You sold one home and then you bought another home.
Or half a home.
Right, exactly. Now so it's a lateral, like in California, I see it as a lateral move. It really is, unless you're going from 2 to 3 or 4, and now we're talking, it's a totally different ballgame, right? So the ability to take funds from California, packaging them up, find another state and do it, super advantageous, right? But the caveat, I'm in California. I'm not in Texas. I'm not in Oklahoma. I'm not in Arizona. So the time that you need to travel to identify your agent in the other state, to look at that market condition that are different from California, to structure the whole deal, to let you at exchange know, hey, Chris, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. All of those complexities have to be baked into this thing, right? And so I think that communication piece is so huge, because when you can articulate, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it, these are the people that are going to be involved, then from my vantage point, all of a sudden, now you have a framework that you can work with. And the cherry on top is, oh, by the way, I'm taking California money and I'm putting it elsewhere where I can really leverage that. So,
and we see a lot of that. Hence, this is why we're having this discussion, because a lot of investors are actually doing just that. They're able to sell their, $1 million to $3 or $4 or $5 million property, and they go on a shopping spree.
Exactly. I want this one. I want that one. I want that one.
They buy a portfolio of real estate, which is amazing. And the 1031 exchange has been around for over 100 years. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's been around to help investors across the nation to be able to take advantage of this code, this 1031 exchange code, to be able to help them create more wealth for their families and to create a legacy. And having this reverse exchange is just simply amazing. So if we have any viewers who are interested in learning a little bit more about the reverse exchange, and you want to do a reverse exchange, obviously, you can go to John to write up an offer first on the property that they wish to purchase. And then obviously we can handle the facilitation of that exchange. So right now, let's get into some questions. I think we have some question and answer. This is a question and answer period now. So as an escrow officer, what would be the key to track to make sure you're in compliance for the reverse exchange? Okay, so as far as the reverse exchange, that's why we have our in-house attorney. Our in-house attorney will work closely with the escrow officers to make sure that everything is in compliance. Everything is going to be disclosed from the very beginning. All of our clients are going to get a consultation with either Shalene or Christine, and they're going to go through the whole process so that all the questions are answered. We can even have their CPA on board. We can have the listing agent or the buyer's agent on board. That way, everybody knows who's doing what when it comes to the reverse exchange. And also when it comes to lenders too. So that's one of the things that one of the cons actually that I wanted to bring up is that there's not a lot of lenders that can lend on a reverse exchange because of underwriting guidelines. So we do have a few lenders that we can recommend, but mortgage brokers and some other lenders that the investors think that they want to use, sometimes those lenders do not qualify, or their underwriting guidelines do not qualify for doing a loan on a reverse exchange. So very, very important. We've had seen issues of some investors where they used from other exchange companies where they've used a certain lender, and then at the very last minute they couldn't close on that loan because the underwriting guidelines prohibit them from doing a reverse exchange, and simply because the replacement property is the title on that property is with an S corp, and Exchange Resources is on title to that property. So it's one of those things that happen. So John, what do you think about that?
100%. The key thing that I picked up on what you were saying, and it rang true because it literally brought me back to that time when I was doing it. The communication between the closing agent, the escrow, and the qualified intermediary. There's communications that are happening there that should be happening there as this process is going through. So what you stated as far as having everybody involved understand the role that they're playing is very, very important. In our scenario, one of the first things I did was pick up the phone, call the escrow officer and explain, hey, I'm not sure if you've done this before or not, but in case that you haven't, this is what we're participating in. This is who I need you to talk to. By the way, keep me informed on any information, any issues, anything that's going on that you think might hinder this process. Then I talked to the qualified intermediary. Same speech. Hey, this is your escrow officer. This is who you're going to be communicating with. If there are any issues, any problems, anything that you see coming down the pike that needs to be addressed, please let me know. So from my vantage point, the way that I saw it, I was the hub. I was the hub where the spokes came out of, right? Essentially, information's coming into me and going out. Now, I'm not involved in that communication as far as what's being said, but I'm making sure that the communication is being had by the appropriate parties. And I do believe that plays a big role to keeping things smooth. For example, let's say the property is owned by a trust. Now we added another layer of complexity, right? Now the escrow officer has to ask for the trust documentation. Now we got to verify all that information. Qualified intermediary has to do the exact same thing. Does the trust have the authority to sell? Do we have the proper documentation for the QI to actually do what they need to do, right? So all of these things you don't think about it when you're first getting into it, and all of a sudden, John, where's this documentation? John's running around trying to find the documentation. Hey, who's got this? Got to find out, get it to the right person. So, and again, the timing, right? Most of these conversations don't happen like, oh, you need this document, boom, here it is. It's, I got to go find it. I got to go talk to the person who has it. Give me a day or so to get it to you. Okay, fine. But one day becomes 2 days becomes 5 days becomes 10, and all of a sudden you're looking. So from that vantage point, it was a really interesting experience as far as making sure that the flow of communication was taking place appropriately so that everybody knew what was going on. Final piece that I don't think we've touched on at all, but conveying this to the agent on the other side, so important that they know what you're trying to do beyond just, I wrote it on the offer, buyers participating in a 1031 exchange. Do you understand, buyer's agent, listing agent, whatever side you're on, what we're doing? Do you understand that it won't affect your client, but it certainly will affect mine? So I need cooperation as far as trying to execute this. And if there's anything that you need from us to make this happen, please let me know. So in essence, like I said, the agent really plays such an important role in this giant piece because, like you said, Chris, we don't want our clients touching that money. that money has to go to the appropriate party. We do not want to trigger a tax event either by negligence, by simple mistake, or by simply not honoring the requirements of the exchange. And all of a sudden I'm having to explain to you, so remember how we said you weren't going to be paying that $120,000 in taxes? Well, we're going to have a discussion, Chris, because it didn't go quite the way we wanted. You know, that to me is like the ultimate, oh my God, what are we doing here? So
yeah, that's your reputation on the line.
Absolutely. They trusted you, right? They look, the client is looking to you as the expert to usher this through. You're the shepherd, right? You're the shepherd taking this venture out. And so if you don't know what's going on, ask. If you do know what's going on, keep everybody informed. And ultimately, communication, so important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ryan, for that question. We have another question, John. Let's see who it's from. Okay. What is an example of a missed opportunity where a property owner could have used a 1031 exchange? What is an example of a missed opportunity where a property owner could have used a 1031 exchange?
You mentioned it at the top, right? This gentleman, you mentioned the boat, the dock, the buy, like this individual where, you know, I sold my investment property. I didn't get up to speed on potentially what my advantages were. And now I found out, oh, I can defer the taxes. This is great. Chris, let's do it. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry to let you know, we had to have this conversation 2 months ago, not today. So, from my vantage point, if you are an investor, if you are thinking about moving on from your property, adding another property, whatever the situation might be, having a team of trusted individuals you can talk to, and I guess not waiting to the last second. This isn't a last second type of venture. I mean, you can do it, I guess, if you really were if you have the gumption and I'm just gonna go for it. But if ideally success is the desired outcome, then building out the structure, building out who I'm working with, the timeframes, the property, all of that is super important. Otherwise, you could be sitting there looking back going, oh my goodness, I could have saved $120,000 that I could have rolled into my apartment complex, my, whatever it is that I'm buying, and a commercial building, an office building, something like that. The possibilities, I think, are sometimes lost on people of what they can do. It doesn't have to be a home for a home, right? It could be a home for something else. And so I do think that sometimes the lack of understanding that is available to them is what ultimately leads to potentially missing out on an opportunity. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. And I think that there's a lot of investors out there who don't know, especially the baby boomers, who don't know that this option is available. And then they wind up just selling their investment property saying, well, I just want to sell it. I don't want to deal with any of that. And they wind up paying 30 to 40% in taxes. We had a client who bought a property in Bird Rock in La Jolla 20 years ago, a Filipino client, $2 million gain.
Wow.
Guess what? He was just going to sell it and pay 30 to 40% in taxes, $600,000 to $800,000 in taxes. Guess what? I did a presentation with one of the agents in one of their offices, and she was able to talk to him, and we were able to save him $600,000 to $800,000 in taxes. He was able to roll that over into another property and buy a DST. So the DSTs, they're going to be getting a passive income, and then they have at least another property, and they didn't have to pay any of those taxes. So these are just a lot of the opportunities. There's just so many, different ways you can go, but definitely if you want to save money and defer all those capital gains taxes, create more wealth, build a legacy for your family, whether it's going to be through a traditional, delayed exchange, straightforward exchange, or, you want to do a reverse exchange, depending upon, what you want to do. These are all, opportunities that investors can definitely take advantage of. We have one more question. John, here we go. If you buy out of state, what will happen with the taxes due in California? So depending upon what state you purchase in, right? So if you're selling in California, and this is a CPA question, by the way. So we're not CPAs, we're not financial advisors. So we definitely recommend that, our investors talk to their CPA. But if you're selling in California where there is state income tax, and you're buying a property with no state income tax, potentially you're still going to have to pay the California taxes because you're residing in California and you pay state income taxes. What do you think, John?
I kind of follow what you're saying, and I would tend to agree. This is a federally issued part of the code, right? So federal means we can take it from state to state, maybe no Fed tax.
Yeah,
But
all 50 states. Right?
Yeah, but FTV is very good about collecting their portion of
Yes.
the program while the transaction's going, right? They keep a keen eye on these I mean, it's such a big amount of money.
Yep.
It triggers such a large tax event that it really is difficult to kind of try to finagle your way around it. So from my vantage point, I kind of tend to agree that there potentially could be something there. Something that you touched on too. Look at what we talked about: CPA, attorney, 2 realtors, escrow officer, intermediary, possibly out of state. Do you see what I'm talking about as far as the complexity, the timing, the moving? Yeah, exactly, the moving pieces. So not that it can't be done, not that it's just one of those things that I like to highlight it, because when you're on the outside looking in, it's like, well, I'm just buying a property and I'm going to sell it. No big deal, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're in it, all of a sudden these things start to spring up and you start to see, wow, I got literally 10, 12 people working on this, all in different facets, all in different capacities, but all working as a whole to allow that investor to take their money elsewhere and really be able to capitalize on it. And so if there's a key concept that I want to relay, is that this is a great vehicle to use, but to also allow yourself the opportunity to really take full advantage of it. And that means maybe not wait till the last second, maybe start making those relationships, those kind of like what we're doing right now. Right now, folks know a great exchange company that they can work with. They know a great
they know a great realtor.
Absolutely, right? Exactly. And so ideally, if you do have questions, pick up the phone, send an email, maybe a DM nowadays, right? Something to get the ball rolling, get the information flowing, because as you can see, this isn't going to be your traditional, I called up the listing agent on Friday and now I'm listing it next week. This is going to be a little bit more involved in allowing yourself that. Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself time to breathe, right? This is already going to be complex as it is. Why add layers there by waiting till the last minute on everything?
Fantastic. I think we covered a lot of information, and we just wanted to thank our viewers today and all the questions for our show. John Case, attorney, realtor extraordinaire, thank you so much for being here on our show. And we wanted to thank all of our viewers for being here. Again, Chris Astillero with Exchange Resources and John Case with
Tuomo Realty.
Thank you so much for having us, and we'll see you at the next LEARNin Local Live 1031.